Hi there, and welcome to the Neckpour. My name's Lewis, and welcome to the Whisky Review channel, where I give you my thoughts and opinions on a particular bottle of whisky from the Neckpour all the way down to the Dregs. You join me here today for the first video after my return from our 2-week trip in Scotland. And you can see there's plenty of goodies ahead of me, and I'll be breaking down what I've got and the videos that will be coming to celebrate them. In this video, we're going to take the Neckpour of this bottle, a hand-fill from Clydeside Distillery in Glasgow that I'm really excited to get into. I had a little taste of it in the distillery shop after a tour, but it'd be nice to properly break it down, try it in glass with a nice bit of water as well, and see where we are with it. But I'll put that to one side and just briefly talk about where we've been. Before I get into the video, I would just like to say, please do hit the like button if you're enjoying the content. Drop me a comment below if you've got any thoughts on this particular bottle of whiskey or anything else you'd like to see me try. And please hit subscribe and the notification bell if you want to see some more. It does really mean a lot to me. So yeah, during our 10 days, you can probably see from the glasses ahead of me, we had quite a few whiskey experiences. Starting in Edinburgh, the first place we went was the Port of Leith Distillery. And as part of our little trip, we've picked up glasses everywhere we went whiskey-wise, so we've got those as a bit of a memory. I've got a bottle of the Port of Leith blended whiskey, because they're too young to be putting out their own whiskey yet. But I do also have a bottle of New Make that'll taste alongside that in another distillery. New Make was fantastic. The blended whiskey they're doing is fantastic, and I'm really excited in a couple of years' time when their own whiskey's on the market. We'll put that to a side for today. From there, the next place we went into was the Johnnie Walker experience, again in Edinburgh. Really enjoyed it. I'm not sure it's necessarily set up for whiskey purists. I think it's much more of a tourist attraction, but it's almost like Disneyland for whiskey. Didn't pick up any bottles there, although the 2 seasonal collections were really good quality. However, whilst we were in Scotland, I did see a bottle of a limited release Johnnie Walker, 46%, 10-year-old rye cask finish at auction at a really good price. So a Neckpour of that will be coming, and now I've got an appropriate bit of glassware to go with that one. So really enjoyed it. The next place we went to was onto the Isle of Arran, and I took a tour of the Lowlands Distillery, where the Arran single malt comes from. I did the dunnage and drams experience there, so tasting in the dunnage warehouse, tasting some really old bits. A 28-year-old and a 27-year-old were the 2 oldest. Picked up 2 20 centilitre bottles, a hand-fill and one of the single cask that's limited to people that have done that particular tour. Wow, what an experience that was. What amazing whiskey. And to taste something from a distillery that's almost as old as me, that was put down in the 2nd year of the distillery being open, is pretty special. So I've got those 2 bottles to come. I think I'll do those as one particular video, and the 2 20 centilitres tasting them against each other, but maybe I'll do them separately. I'm not sure. If you guys have got any thoughts, leave them below. And from there, we went on to Oban. I took a tour of the Oban distillery. I didn't actually pick anything up at Oban. There was a hand-fill that I was quite interested in, but they didn't offer any shipping. And by this point, we still had Glasgow to go. We'd gone up on the train, so we only had our rucksacks with us. And I didn't want to be lugging around a 70 centilitre bottle, because again, they didn't do smaller bottle sizes. It was 70 or nothing. It was really enjoyable, was the distillery tour, as was the tasting, as was the hand-fill, and one of the distillery exclusives was really good as well. But based on the price, I thought they were a little bit expensive for what they were, and the fact that we'd have had to have lugged them around on our backs just slightly put me off. So we didn't pick anything up there, but I did get a glass as a bit of a souvenir, and both myself and my wife absolutely fell in love with Oban and Arran as a place. So we might be back sometime in the future and maybe have a bit more space then. And then our last whiskey experience, and more notably for this one, was at the Clydeside Distillery. Now, this was the only one that we hadn't sort of pre-planned that, that's near where we're staying, let's go to. It was just I had a day free whilst my wife was working that day and was looking at things to do. Saw it popped up and it was nice and easy to get to on the bus, and thought, yeah, let's take a little trip over, have a little tour. And yeah, what a place it was. I'll pop a couple of pictures up now of the distillery. It's right on the banks of the Clyde and it's really, really pretty. And instead of just doing the normal distillery tour, I did a chocolate tasting. So we tried 5 different whiskies, each of those whiskies with a different handmade, locally made chocolate. I put a picture of there. In one sense, I was slightly disappointed that not all of the whiskies on display for us were from Clydeside. I think 3 of the 5 we tasted were actually AD Rattray bottles, because they're also owned by Morrison's Distillers, which are the same parent company as the Clydeside Distillery, but really, really interesting. I think the highlight for me, there was a Kalila with a cocoa dusted dark chocolate truffle, and that super peaty with that super dry cocoa of the dark chocolate was, wow, it was really amazing actually, the combination of the two. And it's not something I'd have ever put together, and it really was quite sort of eye-opening to see how these pairings work and things like that, but really enjoyed it. And then afterwards went down to the shop, we're having a look at a couple of bits and bobs, saw they had a hand-fill available, asked for a taste, and wow, just absolutely blew me away. And that was tasting it out of a little plastic shot glass. So I think tasting it in glass, possibly with a little bit of water, because it is fairly pokey, is this one. I think, yeah, it's only going to be better. So before I waffle on any further, let's get this bottle open and see what we think. Really, really nice packaging and bottling. And what I liked, they gave you the option of if you wanted the tin or not. You could save a couple of quid and the environment a little bit if you chose not to go for a tin. I did choose to go for one, again, purely just for safety in terms of transporting it back. But it's always fun getting to fill your own. I've got a little bit of footage here of me doing so, but I'll insert for you to have a little look at while I get this open. So yeah, a little bit more about this one. It's entirely ex-bourbon. It's just over 6 years old. Single cask, 60.1%. And it's bottle number 153. So they're over halfway of this particular one. They're saying it takes them sort of about a month or so to go through each sort of bottle. And yeah, I really like the packaging. This line you'll see across all of their things, and it's to represent the chine line of a boat being down on the harbour and things like that. But yeah, really, really enjoyed this when I tasted it before. So let's get it open and have another little sip, shall we? Let's first have a listen to the cork. Pretty good, pretty good. And again, very handsome corks on the bottle. Really like them. I think they've spent a lot of time making things look good, but what's important to us is what's in here. And after my first taste, I was pretty impressed with this. But yeah, obviously natural colour, non-chill filtered, all the good stuff we like to see. It's obviously way above 40%. A lovely light golden colour from, you know, a good bourbon cask. And on the nose, that's just sweet cream. Vanilla. Those two combine to make a kind of custard. A little bit of the alcohol, but it's not super hot. And there's a very fruity sort of thing in there. Quite a maybe a grapefruit. Lots of citrus oils anyway. But yeah, altogether it's an absolutely lovely nose. And let's give this a little taste. I mean, that first sip is my first sip of the day. It is 60%. It's a little bit punchy. But as soon as I go back into that, again, heaps and heaps of cream. Lots of citrus. There's a little bit of grain coming through there, just in the background. And it almost starts to go to a sort of brighter, and maybe from a grapefruit right through to a lemon, you know, it's quite bright and zingy. But yeah, that's just, it's lovely. It's really, really lovely. And then on the finish, again, it's super, super custardy, super vanilla-y, and there's just that little hint of oakiness from the bourbon cask in there. That's like leathery oakiness that I often attribute with bourbon. I'm going to put a little drop of water in here because it's certainly got the strength to hold up to it. I'm just going fairly heavily, and you can see just how oily that is. The minute that water's added, that's crazy just how much, you know, lipids and things and proteins are in there, which is just a great sign that I always find the less has been done to these whiskies as well, the better they get whilst in glass. And that nose is really lightened, actually. You've got more citrus on the nose. Again, that vanilla cream, you could almost be talking like a sort of like a lemon posset dessert. And lots of sweetness on the nose now that water's been added. A bit more of that oaky spice with that water. A bit more of those kind of volatile things are coming out. A bit more oaky spice on the first punch of the palate. And then loads more caramel. And it's almost like a caramel toffee on the palate. And then the finish just gets more leathery, walnutty, oaky, almost the smell of a cigar, that kind of raw tobacco note on the nose. But that's absolutely stunning. I'm so glad I picked this bottle up. I'm so glad I saw the distillery was open for a tour. And again, thank you to the guys at Clydeside. Felt really welcome. Wonderful cafe. Had a couple of good coffees when I first got there before I did the tour. And yeah, really happy we picked this bottle up and that it got home safely with us. And then the price point of this was £62. And I'll say that again, this was £62. It was £69 with the tin. And then you got 10% off for doing the tour. So it brought it down to, yeah, £62.30, I think, was the final price for this. This is a 6-year-old single cask strength, naturally presented whiskey. Brought from the distillery. It's a distillery exclusive. And I just think that's just ridiculously good value for money. When you compare it to the prices of the things, as I was mentioning at Oban, I think theirs was £130 was their hand-fill. Granted, it was a couple of years older. It was an 8-year-old. But was it twice as good as this? I'm sure it wasn't. I mean, I remember being impressed when I tasted the spirit at Oban. But this is absolutely gorgeous. And again, I think we need to be supporting these smaller independent brands. You know, the whiskey market's not great at the moment. And these guys have spent a lot of money getting these things off the ground. And I'd much rather be putting my money into the young guns, you know, who are putting out the really good stuff and everything they put out is the way we want it, rather than, you know, these big old name distilleries who are putting out a lot of slop. But no, I'm absolutely blown away by this. And again, it's now a distillery that are firmly on my radar. I'm going to be keeping an eye on everything they release. I mean, this week, they've literally just announced and released their first ever peated whiskey. And again, I think that's sub £40. I think it's 5 years old, so it's a little bit younger than this. It is non-age stated, but I think they do say it's 5 years old, and very limited release because they only do 2 weeks of peated malt a year. But it's, again, ridiculous value, 46% natural colour, non-chill filtered. If I come across a bottle, I'll certainly be looking to pick one up. However, I am a little bit whiskey rich at the moment, so I might be waiting till the new year till I've drank through a couple of bottles over Christmas before I make any more investments. But no, I'm so excited to hear what you guys have got to say about this as well. Please let me know if you've tried anything from Clydeside and what you thought of them, or if there are any more of these, younger distilleries that are only just starting to get into the market that you think I need to be aware of and I need to be keeping my eye out for, so I know what's good and what's worth keeping an eye out for. But other than that, before I keep just waffling on about how much I'm enjoying this, I would just like to say thank you so much for joining me here today. It really does mean a lot to me that you take time out of your day to watch me. If you've enjoyed the content and you've got this far, please do hit that like button down below. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means a lot to me. Drop me a comment, as I said, if there's anything you think I should be keeping my eyes on, or you've got any thoughts on anything from these guys. And please do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to be notified next time I post. Again, it means the world to me that you guys come back and watch me week on week. It's certainly not something I expected, that's for sure. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you again so much for joining me here today. And until the next time, for another episode of the Neckpour, the Dregs, or just my thoughts and opinions on whiskey, I'd like to say cheers, Salancha, and I'll see you again.